Hello everybody, it's Mr. Pattinson here. I'd like to talk to you about your new project. I'm coming to you today from a big empty room somewhere on the Niagara frontier. This seems like a reasonable way to communicate with you, so I'm recording a lesson and maybe you can go back and look at it a couple of times. This is my third take. Doesn't matter. You're looking for a ceramics project, I know, but clay is not really a reality for us right now. Instead, I'm proposing a sculpture project that you can do entirely at home. It's related to ceramics, but it may not necessarily be a three-dimensional form. Well, what does that mean? I'm proposing a project in conceptual art. The idea may be new to you, but this is a great place to try it out. The project is called Home. You've been at home for a long time, and you're starting to feel some freedoms again, including coming back to school. But we do have that common experience of being at home for an extended period of time. Certainly for me, 6 months is the longest I've ever been without students in my life for the last 30 years or so. So I have some feelings about that experience, and I'm sure you have feelings about your experience too. The project is called Home, and the notion is conceptual art. Well, what is conceptual art? Conceptual art is art in which the concept or the idea that you come up with is more important than the material, the aesthetic, or the technical considerations. That means that your idea has primacy over the product. It's not so much about the finished product. Instead, it's about the idea that you're going to develop and present visually. What does that look like? Well, it doesn't need to be conventional art-making materials. It doesn't have to be made with traditional tools. Instead, all the rules are off. This is an art form that was popularized in the early 20th century, and I think you're going to enjoy it. Certainly, if the materials don't matter, then you're free to come up with any working materials that suit your needs. You are the author of your own work, and you will find the work that is most satisfying to you through the materials that you choose to communicate your idea. It's all about the idea. It's not so much the product. That's very important to keep in mind. So we've all had a common experience. We've all gone through the isolation, the school closure, the extended family time, 6 months away from routine and regular habits. As individuals, we'll have varying reactions to that experience. And it's those reactions that I would like you to try and document in this project. Well, where do you begin with something like this? Non-traditional art-making techniques and unconventional materials. Well, start with your idea, because the idea is most important. Your creative process is up to you. Maybe you're fortunate enough to have ideas spring fully formed in your head. Most of us don't have that experience. Instead, we begin by generating ideas. And I'm encouraging you to generate a vast number of ideas and then pick from your best options. Anyway, I've set the table for you. I've put the dishes and the knives and forks, cups in front of you in terms of what the project is. Now it's up to you to fill the plate with your own notions and experiences. Materials too. So the problem is set in the preparation stage of your creative process. Now it's up to you to generate possibilities. Not all of them are great, granted, but some of them will be discarded right away. Others deserve that investment of time and further thought. I like to see things. I'm a visual learner, so I write things down. But maybe you will write things on Post-it notes, recipe cards, throw them on your dining room table, move things around, generate ideas that way. Maybe you can play some music and have ideas flow to you in an inspirational form that way. It's up to you how you find your working method. I'm putting mine together in a mind map like this, And I've written them out ahead of time just to make this a bit more concise. Theme ideas. Well, shelter relates to home. I see home as a shelter. I see it as a safe and protective place. I think about the time that I've had there. 6 months. That's a long time. From here, I can peel off other ideas. So I have shelter. Well, shelter is protection and safety. It's also very familiar to me, so it's comforting. Comforting, familiarity, those are good inspirational words. They already are starting to give me some ideas. Safety and protection, well, I guess I missed this part. Shelter is very much interior, so there's a contrast, really. You can think about interior and exterior. There's definitely an exterior threat, and thus the sense of protection. But what happens inside the house? The safety of the interior. There's a contrast there. Maybe I could play with that. Well, if I'm safe and protected in my home, I'm free to do pretty much what I want to do. What were my activities? How did I fill my time? What did I do to make that time meaningful and purposeful? Did I take on any extra projects? Maybe they could be reflected in this sculpture project as well. So I've got some possibilities here. I could definitely make further lists. I know I like to paint. I know I did some work around the house. Those kinds of things. Time is something that, when I think about this project, keeps coming back to me. So I think there's some promise there, because time, well, on one hand, it's a luxury. It can be tedious. I guess that's a drawback. Predictability, well, that's a drawback too, if your days become predictable. And the routine is ingrained. You probably felt that sense of routine in your home, where most of the days began to blend into each other. Although, it's also an exciting time, because there are benefits to your isolation and benefits to being outside the mold of your regular day. So, do you have new ideas? Did you come up with an idea for creative work? Did you come up with a refined sense of what you would like to do after high school? You had time to think about these things. Did you develop any new skills? Did you learn how to knit? Did you learn how to drive? All of those activities have their own associative images. And when you start playing with the idea this way and extending it into possibilities, now you have 3 or 4 or even more ranges of ideas that you can extend. So at this point, it's about generating possibilities and extending your ideas to see where they lead. Okay, this is where it starts to become exciting. I have some ideas here. When I think about the activities I was involved with for a long time, I know that I did much more reading than I might otherwise do. I have a list of books that I might not have had time to get to for years to come. So I like that idea. I'll put it up here. Well, what kind of associative images do I have when I think about books? Well, I have the books themselves. There's possibility there because they're in my house. I can work with them. Books are an unconventional art material, and I could use them. Well, what can I connect to the books? Well, maybe a bookshelf. Hey, wait a minute. There's my idea in red. My idea is to pick up on maybe some of the themes in those books, the ideas that I was reading about. Well, I found kind of a guilty pleasure in reading travel literature and travel writing. I love traveling, I love travel writing, I love reading about other people's experiences. So I happened to find a good series of books that inspired my ideas of travel, and it made me feel like I was traveling with a smart friend who liked to go interesting places. There's a bunch of books like that, so I think that's possible. Well, if it's a travel theme that I'm working with, hey, now I can get my suitcase out, I might pack my bags, I might take a notebook or a journal with me. These are possibilities. These are coming pretty close to inspiring some images that I could work with. If I pursue that, I know that I have many different options within my house to communicate that idea, hopefully clearly and successfully. I listen to a lot of music. I listen to a lot of music all the time. I listen to music on my computer, on records, CDs. I have a big box of cassette tapes, but I don't know what I'll ever do with them. But I listen to a lot of music. And having this extended period of time and time to work in my garage and in my studio, I listen to new music. I listen to music that was familiar and comforting. I could add that to my list as well. Music is very comforting to me. Well, I could do something with that too. I have equipment to play music on. I certainly have some instruments at home too. Now I have an idea for that one. And it has to do with how the days seem to blend together, and yet I still had lots of stimulation through music and reading. So there's something to be explored there. Well, we can go back to this idea of shelter as well. Shelter means, well, I guess my house is the basic form of shelter that I have. Well, my shed, my garden, those are all protective areas that provide shelter to my family and I. I have tents because I like to camp. So tent is very much a portable shelter. I have a dining tent. A dining tent has transparent walls, and if I'm playing with the idea of exterior and interior, well, that's one way of seeing what's going on in interior and being aware of what's happening outside. A tent is a very strong metaphor for home. Wait a minute, now I have an idea. No light bulb yet, but what about all those other things that are in my house that I could build into a shelter, like sheets and a duvet, maybe some chairs, blankets? I think I have something happening here, and there's my light bulb for this one, okay? So I have 3 strong notions about where I can take this project next. This is my idea generation stage, and all of a sudden I have possibilities. If we've successfully generated some possibilities, a number of possibilities that represent 3, 4, 5 ideas that could be developed, then we can begin to play around with them. And by play around with them, we're going to call that experimenting. So you're going to experiment with those ideas that you've generated. If you're lucky, you'll have one that will really bear fruit. If not, you may have to discard the whole process at this point and go back to the beginning and try some more idea generation. But I'm confident that your idea generation will lead to something that you can experiment with. And if we're moving on to that stage, well, I have some ideas. So I walked around my house. I have margarine container, Post-it notes, some paper plates, very sharp knife, a bunch of these bulldog clips, these spring-loaded bulldog clips. I have a deck of playing cards. I have some white acrylic paint, a ruler, some paintbrushes. I have a start, and I can begin to play around with some ideas. This is where it becomes tangible. This is where you begin working with the physical objects that will make your idea communicative to somebody who is sharing the experience of looking at your work. I wish you luck. I'll let you know how this goes for me, and I'll be talking with you online to see how your idea generation is coming along too. Goodbye for now. I'll see you on MS Teams, or I won't. Have a great day. Bye for now.